Hi, in this video I'm going to teach you how to write a great villain. I've been working late in the lab and cooking up a secret sauce which I call Price's Villain Extra. Add a few drops to your novel and watch the fireworks. And I've come to this place for some inspiration because this behind me is Merton College, Oxford, which is where J.R. Tolkien taught English literature in the 50s. And of course, as we know, Tolkien was responsible for one of the greatest literary villains ever, Sauron from The Lord of the Rings, and we'll be looking at him in a while. And I'll also be revealing what Vlad the Impaler did to the poor 15th century Benedictine monk, Brother Hans. It's probably one of the most wicked acts in the entire annals of human depravity. So welcome aboard again for another installment of my series on how to write your novel using that most unlikely of writing implements, a round Oxford bus ticket. This video is going to be in two parts because it's quite a bit of ground to cover, even though the secret sauce I distill is actually simple to use and surprisingly effective. But don't worry, although the lesson is in two parts, I will tell you in this one what happened to poor Brother Hans. Now, in order to prepare my secret sauce, I've been looking at some celebrated instances of literary villains: Othello, Lolita, Dangerous Liaisons, Dracula. And here I am working late at the lab, aided by my manservant Igor. "You must eat Dr. Price." "No, Igor, no, can't you see?" "It's alive! It's alive!" There are three main ingredients in the secret sauce, and I've called them Flamboyance, Innocence Defiled, and the dark thing chained up in the basement of your heart. But before I explain what the heck they all mean, we need first to understand why the villain is so important. In many ways, the villain is one of the most important characters in your book. To understand why, let us consider what a story is. Now, generally, although of course there are exceptions, a story is about a hero who sets off on a quest for something and encounters numerous obstacles and difficulties and setbacks. And the hero is burnished in the crucible of adversity and as a consequence grows psychologically. They call it growth, and it's good. We like growth. And the villain is the one who, by challenging the hero at every turn, forces him to grow. A lot of writing textbooks get this wrong. They go on about the psychological makeup of the villain, but we don't normally need to worry about that. The real ingredient in my Villain Extra secret sauce derives from the inner life of someone far more important to you, namely you. And we'll look at that later when we come to the dark thing chained up in the basement of your heart. The first item on my shopping list I've called Flamboyance. One of the villain's roles is to entertain, by being so audaciously evil that we are horrified, or horrified deliciously. In previous videos I've said that stories are essentially emotion delivery machines, and because of the peculiar nature of the fictive dream, we don't simply watch the emotion, we experience it firsthand, as if we are participating in the story. When Cinderella gets her prince at the end and they live happily ever after, we rejoice. We can't help ourselves. But another part of the alchemy is that we enjoy pain and suffering too. So when Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, in contrast to Cinderella, do not get married at the end of Casablanca, when they part and we know in our hearts they are not going to live happily ever after, we cry our eyes out and we enjoy that too. But it seems to me that in order for the villain to give us a big dollop of emotion, it's not enough to be ordinarily bad. Being bad is easy. The truly great villains have a wonderful creative aspect to their wrongdoing. They are audaciously villainous. To see what I mean, consider this true story. A woman donated her kidney to her boss, and when the boss returned, she fired the woman who had donated the kidney. Isn't there something special about the horribleness of that? It's in a league of its own. Well, let us consider a villain that doesn't have flamboyance. Blofeld from the Bond movies. What does he do? He sits there stroking a cat and planning to take over the world. Who cares? Is there any part of you that feels remotely concerned by the prospect of Blofeld taking over the world? The threat is too abstract, and it just doesn't stir any emotion in your loins. And the same goes for Tolkien's Sauron. I know that in many ways Sauron is a masterpiece of darkness. The air of menace and mystical fear he generates radiates out from those dark towers on every page. You can sense a thrilling darkness. But the trouble is, he is incorporeal. You can't really picture him. So what can he do to you if he catches you? He will bear thee away to the house of lamentation beyond all darkness, where thy shrivelled mind will be left naked to the lidless eye. It's not very scary, is it, being stared at by a lidless eye? Let's contrast it with a villain who does scare me, Vlad the Impaler, the 15th century prince of Wallachia. He liked to impale people, which is a pretty horrible thing to do. You take a sharpened stick or pail and put it up the victim's you-know-what, and let them sit on it for a few days as they slowly die. Well, there may be more painful ways to die, but I haven't heard of them. And this is where the flamboyance comes in. Vlad the Impaler was so much larger than life. He once nailed a man's hat to his head. And he had a forest of pails with 20,000 impaled decaying corpses, and he liked to sit down there at dinner time and eat his dinner amongst the moaning impaled wretches. Well, that's pretty palpable in terms of evil, isn't it? And unlike Blofeld, he had a sense of humour. Take the story of the Benedictine monk, Brother Hans. Brother Hans was staying at a Franciscan monastery nearby, and one day they met purely by chance, and Vlad the Impaler, who despite being a cruel and bloodthirsty monster was also a deeply pious Christian, he asked Brother Hans whether the Lord would forgive him for all his impaling. Now, given that everything round there was punishable by death, even idleness, the only sensible answer would have been, "Of course he will. Jesus isn't going to fall out over a few impalements." But Brother Hans was made of sterner stuff, and he told Vlad straight. "Are you nuts? You are the most evil, cruel, bloodthirsty tyrant who ever lived. You haven't got a hope of salvation. You are so horrible even the devil won't want you." Well, no one had spoken to Vlad like that before, and he was furious. And do you know what he did? It's probably one of the most despicable acts found in all the annals of human wickedness. And I'll tell you about it after this short commercial break. Do you sincerely want to be poor? Why not become a writer? Get Gateway to Narnia, my free 10-part email course on how to write your first novel. Click the link in the description beneath this video.
These things take time. Now this novel will sell.
Gateway to Narnia includes free drink in the writer's bar in heaven. What did Vlad the Impaler do to Brother Hans?
We'd like to say that in our opinion it is not suitable for children or for those of you who may have a nervous disposition.
He impaled his donkey.
No! God, please, no!
In part 2 of this video, I want to look at 2 more ingredients in the secret sauce. In particular, I will take you to that roped-off section in the basement of your heart, the place you never visit, where you keep the dark thing chained up, and sometimes on winter nights you can hear it. But before you go, if you enjoyed the video, you might like or subscribe. Don't worry, it doesn't mean you really like me, it just tells the YouTube algorithm to give me a boost. Nothing bad will happen to you. Rumpelstiltskin won't turn up in 2 weeks' time and demand your firstborn. See you next time.